Good morning, everybody. Is my audio coming through okay?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
By the way, I'm glad to see so many of you were able to show up on such a rainy, windy day. We all appreciate it. I am delighted that we will have an opportunity today to learn about the Sikh culture and heritage. As I'm sure everybody knows, our own New Jersey Attorney General, Gerber Grewal, is a Sikh. His face and his turban are familiar from both TV and newspapers. Our speaker today is Kavneet Singh, and he is going to be telling us about the Sikh heritage. He's a longtime resident of New Jersey, has gotten his bachelor's and MBA from Rutgers, and he is the currently National Resource and Advocacy Officer of the American Sikh Council. He has served for several years with the Interfaith Philadelphia Religious Leaders Council, leading religious understanding and interfaith dialogue since 2004. And he's been actively involved with the Coalition of Peace in Princeton since 2003, and the National Religious Campaign Against Torture in Washington since 2006. He's the founder and chair of the National Sikh Scouts of America, and he's a member of the Scouts Religious Relationships Committee. He's been honored with the Silver Beaver Award for his service in the scouting community. With that, I am going to turn it over to Kavneet Singh for his presentation. Take it away, Kavneet.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting me. It is a privilege. If you would just bear with me for a second, I am going to do a screen share. Okay. I think one of the gentlemen mentioned, Rich was just mentioning about Gerber Grewal. So I've got his mugshot here, and the other gentleman here is the mayor of Hoboken, Ravinder, or he's known as Ravi Bala. I've known him for a longer time than I've known Gerber. I've known Gerber's dad for a long time, but I don't know Gerber that well. The reason I put both these is because they're from New Jersey, and a lot of you may have known of them, at least some of you at least. So the identity, the distinguished turban is really one of those markers which makes folks of the Sikh faith stand out and be distinguished. So that's one of the reasons where there are always questions. Okay. There are many religions and faiths of all kinds, but I'm just picking on the 7 organized faiths, which are more known across the planet. So the Semitic faiths, which most of you folks are already familiar with, you know, came out of the Middle East, old Palestine, Judaism being the oldest, and then Christianity, and then Islam. Now, these 3 are from the Middle East. A lot of people, I think it gets lost in translation. When you talk to the common person in America or Canada, North America, a lot of them don't even understand. They just assume that Christianity is a Western faith, you know, or Judaism or Islam. All of them are from the Middle East. And somehow the media has perpetuated in a very subtle manner that it's not from the Middle East, kind of, even though everyone knows it. And I'll come to that in a bit. The other 4 major religions are from South Asia. I don't use the word India here because India is a very modern construct. And just a little side note, the word India was never used by folks from that part of the world. This was something which was given to them by the colonialists who ruled them. They were looking for the great Indies. That's how they landed up in America. to begin with, and searching for, honey, gold, and spice is how they landed up in the Indian subcontinent. And they named everybody who lived there Indians, just like they named everyone when the same folks from Europe came to America, that they're all Indians in America. Well, they're really not Indians anywhere. So what is today modern India, Pakistan? Hinduism is the only among these 7 religions, which I pointed out over here, which has no founder. So it's not the same as the other faiths, where there is a founder, and the founders have written a scripture, and it's an organized faith. It's a mix of many different and diverse thought processes, which completely differ with each other, all under one umbrella called Hinduism. Again, this is a very in-depth topic by itself, but the actual name of Hinduism is Sanatan Dharma. That is the accurate name. Hinduism, the word does not exist in any of the scriptures. I just want to point that out. Buddhism and Jainism are also very old religions, and the Sikh religion is the youngest among these 7, and that's about approximately 550 years old. Some folks think it's monotheistic. It's even more than monotheistic. It's more like monoism, where there's no Trinity at all. Like, for example, in Hinduism, partly in Christianity. So this is strictly the belief in the one. Just kind of bear with me. I think okay, sorry, my down arrow was a little sticky. So a brief overview of the Sikh religion. It is currently the 5th largest religion in the world, with approximately 30 million. We don't have hard numbers because it's difficult to do a census when you have Sikhs spread out across the diaspora. So we are working on getting our census current and updated, but that's in the works. Science and our religion, we don't have any issue. There's a lot of science in our scripture, and so I just want to put that out there. The founding prophet of our faith, his name was Guru Nanak Sahib. The word guru is not the same word which is thrown around today in the American lexicon, where you say, hey, that's a computer guru, meaning an expert. Well, here the word is very different. If you split the word Gu and Ru, Gu means darkness. That's ignorance of the mind. And Ru means light, being enlightened. You go to a teacher to learn so you can, take that ignorance out of your mind and get enlightened. So guru here is a much higher honor given to that person who is your prophet. The word sahib, which is used for someone who's a king, that is the honorific given to the prophet. So Guru Nanak Sahib, Nanak was his name. Was born in Talwandi Sabo in Punjab. So Punjab was a country by itself from 1799 to 1849, till the British then colonized it. But this is going back in time. Punjab has been around for over 1,000 years, so has the language. What Guru Nanak preached was there is one creator, one humanity. There are no differences. All humans are equal. That's something he stressed throughout his lifetime. He traveled from the east all the way, where modern India today exists, close to Myanmar, and then traveled all the way to Saudi Arabia, Mecca, and had 4 separate trips, one to the north, one to the south, going to Sri Lanka, and then one heading west. The idea was to talk to people of different faiths and religions and to spread the word of being a unified, universal humanism. That was the primary crux of his teachings. I'm going to go down to the very bottom. One is women. So women and equality and emancipation has always been a problem with most major faiths, and each one has done it in their own fashion. But in the Sikh faith, the female or a woman has been used in many contexts to explain the one, the creator, or for a lack of a better word, God. And imagine God being the husband, or the creator being the husband, and we humans being the wives. That is how the scripture in many parts is written, to explain also at the same time that women actually have a higher place. And there's a very poignant line in the scripture saying, how can you call women lowly when even kings are born from them? So talk about women emancipation. This was done over 500 years ago and part of our faith. We had 10 prophets and lighteners from 1469 to 1708. So 239 years of actually trying to inculcate this universal humanistic religion among the lay people to get them together, because there were two major issues in that part of the world. One was that there's a caste system in the Hindu religion, which is still very divisive. And the other was because the Mughals ruled that part of the world for over a millennia. They were very rigid in their teaching and thought processes. So this was to equate that and change things. So I've already mentioned that it's one of the youngest, one of the youngest religions in the world at the moment. And so where are the Sikhs spread out? 80% of them, live in Punjab in modern India. There is a small minority of probably about 25 to 30,000 Sikhs who are still found in Pakistan. And there's an even smaller minority. There were probably, 50,000 or more in Afghanistan, but today they're probably less than 500, and they want to leave Afghanistan because they're being persecuted, along with some Hindus also. Outside Punjab, in the rest of India, there's a few million out there, and the rest are in the diaspora in over maybe 2-3 dozen countries. And so the Sikhs came to the US, first came to Canada actually in the 1890s, and then after a few years, they landed in the US. So the oldest, or the oldest record which is available is somewhere around April, I forget the exact date, April 6th or April 16th, 1899 on Angel Island that's the last record we have, the most current record we have, when Sikhs landed on the California coast. So the first wave were primarily workers, farmers, like most other immigrants who came from Europe, and a handful of students. The second wave were mostly professionals, because immigration laws changed after the 40s. Till the 40s, the immigration laws against Asians, against brown people, were very rigid, and we really didn't want anyone to come in from that part of the world, even though, especially in Canada, they're part of the Commonwealth, but they changed some laws so they could, stop them from coming. So the third wave was in the 80s. Now India has persecuted the Sikhs in a very large manner, and it's been going on from the early 80s all the way to the late 90s, over 14, 15 years of a sustained genocide. I'll come to that in a bit. So that is the other reason why a lot of them left India to come to North America. They went to Canada, they came to the US. So today we have approximately 700,000 Sikhs living in the US. And we are not the majority may be an ethno-religious bloc, but there's a small minority who have converted on their own to the Sikh faith. And they could be black, white, and all different shades. So what are the principles of the Sikh religion? The key 3 takeaways should be Kirt Karni. Kirt Karni is to earn one's earnings through completely ethical and completely honest means. And so it's rare to find a panhandler among the Sikh community. This is it's in the scripture, it's part of our tradition that you work with your own hands and you don't ask for a handout. One shakna, just like Christianity and many other faiths have, we do give minimum. It's not a standard, it's a minimum that 1/10 of your hard-earned earnings you share with others, especially the needy and the poor. And Nam Japana. So in that order, remembering the divine or the creator at all times is what we are supposed to do. At every moment, every second while you're working in the world. It's not, for us, prayer is not something you sit in a corner and, you know, or sit in a cave, or you just leave humanity and sit somewhere and just keep praying and say, I'm a good person. What good is a person if you can't live among the rest of humanity, good, bad, ugly, and still try to be a good person? Because that's what real life is all about. So these are the main three principles. In addition, to always maintain good moral behavior, just like the Scouts. And like I mentioned earlier, remember the one formless one. So among the Sikhs, or the Sikh faith, there is no such thing as, you know, God's form. God is formless. So the word used for God primarily in the Sikh faith is the Creator, the Almighty. But the word God is more a Western concept, where you know, if I ask a Christian, typically a young person, saying, what do you think if I say, who's God? And if he's a Christian, in his mind, her mind, it might be an old white guy whose son is Jesus. So that's not what we're talking about here. Here, you know, it's a formless one, no birth, no death, etc. And finally, in every prayer which we do, we complete, and we have, you know, if we do our daily prayers, and at the very end of a prayer, the very last line is Sarbat da Pala. We always wish for the positive welfare of all humanity. It's never, oh, just, you know, oh, God bless just the Sikhs, or just bless America, or any other. No, it's bless all humanity. So the faith is primarily about the betterment of humanity, and how we as Sikhs, it's our responsibility to look out not just for ourselves, but to look out for anyone around us. So there is a code, and it's called the Khalsa Code. The word Khalsa means those who are sovereign, and the only sovereign people who believe in is the Almighty, the One, and none else. So the Khalsa Code is more like a brotherhood, sisterhood, a fraternity of complete equals. So for a lack of a better example, for example, in Christianity, you have priests, and they take the oath to become a priest for the rest of their lives, and, you know, to be celibate, etc., whatever each faith or each denomination tells them. For the Sikhs, we have no clergy. Therefore, any lay person who's able-bodied and is of sound mind, it could be 14-year-old, 16-year-old, when they're mature enough to handle themselves to a higher level of an ethical conduct, they then go through a formal initiation ceremony, and that's called Khande Di Paul. And it's a formal initiation where the person upholds themselves to a higher status, and therefore when they do that, they go through the ceremony, they are given these 5 articles of faith. The iron bracelet, which some of you might, you know, have seen, but I'm wearing mine right here. A sword, which is basically a kirpan. A kirpan is, if you look on the right bottom, you'll see this particular one is about 2.5 inches, which is, you know, just under the legal limit in New Jersey to carry. My son carries it also. The older one is formally initiated too. Long breeches. They are knee length undershorts, but basically they're meant for self-discipline. That's what they signify, and chastity, etc. Uncut hair, which pretty much, if you're a Sikh, you will have uncut hair. That is a marker. It's not something you can remove. So all Sikhs, like you see the photograph at the bottom, have long hair. Hair length may vary. You never ever cut your hair, period, from birth to death. Your beard is long. Women, the same, they have long hair. And if they choose to cut their hair, there is no penalty. There may be some, you know, social or religious, you know, folks may ignore them, or, you know, not be friends with them, etc. Those things can happen, but it's not very common. And finally, the comb, the kanga. Kanga is a wooden comb, slightly maybe the same size as you see it there on the screen, and it's about maybe 2.5 inches wide, and I tuck it in under my hair. And the point is not just to use it as a comb. The point is, the metaphorically, is to keep your brain, your bad thoughts away. You know, always have good thoughts and always have goodness in your mind. So these are all meant for a metaphoric, symbolic, you know, symbolism to your faith, to keep you in line, just like a police officer or a soldier has his uniform and has his weapons. It's not to kill anyone, it's to protect yourself and to protect others in need. And why the turban? So the turban is what I call a uniform where you're telling the world that I am a social justice warrior for everybody. So what are the core beliefs? Which I mentioned already, one creator who loves and sustains the universe. Our actions determine our future in this life and not in the afterlife. So for Sikhs, there is no afterlife, hell, heaven. Those concepts are simply, I'll come to that in a second. So all humans are equal in the eyes of the creator. And our faith in the scripture, it's stated that all religions have equal rights, all genders have equal rights, and we are all equal. No religion has a higher authority than the other. The next line, fear none, frighten none, worship the one. This is literally in our scripture. And this is something which most parents teach their children. And this is something very important to us. We don't fear anyone, but we don't frighten anyone either. And by the way, we can't evangelize or proselyte, so we don't go around converting people because we don't get any brownie points for it anyway. So, and coming to hell and heaven, which is a question which a lot of Christians and other folks, the folks from the Semitic faiths ask us. For us, if you are a good human being and you do goodness all the time and you make friends, this world is your heaven, the current world. If I do something evil, I do some really terrible things to somebody, I'm going to go to jail or I'll be in the electric chair. That is my living hell. So it's a state of mind in this life. So what is the crux for a Sikh? What's our goal? The goal is we are all egotistical. In Gurmukhi, in our old language, it's known as manmukh. Manmukh means that you are egotistical. And the goal is to become Gurmukh. Gurmukh means to become God-like. You can't become God, but God-like. So therefore, birth to death, the goal is from being a manmukh to becoming Gurmukh before you pass on. It's like a drop of water. If I'm a drop of water, at the end of life, I merge with the Creator into the ocean. That's really the crux. And again, the Guru Arjan Sahib and Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib, this is our 5th Guru and our 9th Guru. They again have reiterated in the scripture, all religions have the same right to exist. What are the other beliefs? We do not believe in any kind of class or caste system. And caste systems are not just, to the Hindu religion, but castes have existed in different forms, including in America, when we had all the laws against Black and Afro-Americans. So those are caste, is a type of caste system. We don't believe in any fasting or any special days, no superstition, no ritualism, no numerology, horoscopes, no idol worship, no picture worship. No days are special. For example, the Semitic faiths have, the Jews have Saturday as their holy day, Christians have Sunday, and the Muslims have Friday. For Sikhs, every day, anytime is a good day. We typically hold our prayers on either Friday evening or Sunday because it's just practical. It just, that those are the days when you're off, so that's when you have large gatherings. But otherwise, we do prayers at home at any time with our scripture. As far as prohibitions, the key takeaway for us is that Sikhs are not supposed to take any kind of intoxicants, which includes smoking, drinking, drugs, period. Medications are allowed, and some, yes, sometimes some may contain alcohol, but those are allowed. But otherwise, you're not allowed to drink, smoke, etc. We are absolutely not pacifists. Sikhs are very, very big proponents of being activists in the world around us. If you're not an activist, what good are you? Self-defense, absolutely. Do we believe in the Second Amendment? Through and through. So with the concept for a Sikh, the uniform, etc., is the saint warrior concept, Sant Sapai, that while you are a person of a spiritual person, a holy person, for lack of a better word, you have to also be a warrior at the same time. Warrior meaning not go fight, wars for no reason, but is to help anyone who needs protection and stand up for oppression at any time. It could be black, white, purple, Muslim, Hindu, Christian, Jew, doesn't matter who they are. If they need help, I am beholden. It's my responsibility to stand up for others, for their fight, if it is for the right cause. Part of our faith, again, in our scripture and in our tradition, freedom, humility, kindness, compassion, charity, and liberty, justice is a very big deal in the Sikh faith. So the institution of Sangat. Sangat is the gathering where everyone gets together, and they get together to have congregational prayer. So I purposely put this photograph so you see from the angle from the back. So typically, what is covered there is the Holy Scripture. So it's always kept at a higher place. And if you notice, the man who's in attendance to the Scripture is holding something in his hand. That's a whisk. Now the whisk is not to swat flies, but I'm giving an analogy. Imagine that there was a king sitting there, a live person. And I'm sure you've seen photographs of kings. They normally have one or two attendants on either side, waving a whisk of some sort. But that's not to, again, swat flies or to keep the king cool, or the queen cool in this case. But it is to make sure that there's a king and there's a court being held. And there are hundreds of people, courtiers there. And it is to make sure that courtiers are paying full attention to the king or the queen. The focus should be on the king or the queen. So in this case, the focus should be on the Scripture, so everyone's paying attention. The men and women sitting in the audience, they typically sit on a carpeted floor. And again, the reason for sitting on the floor traditionally has been complete equality. You could be a king, you could be a panhandler, but you're all equal in the eyes of the Creator, and you will sit on the same floor while you listen to the Scripture when it's read. And so this is a typical gurdwara, a place of prayer where Sikhs gather and they pray. So we don't worship anything. There's no idols. It's simply that. You see some pictures hanging on there. I'm not sure what they are from here, but typically there are no photographs or pictures of any of our prophets or founders. It's simply could be historic figures who've gone back in history in the last 3-4 centuries. And the next slide is our second institution, which is Pangat. Pangat is the community kitchen. Now, food has always been used in many parts of the world, and America, again, is an example. You couldn't sit and drink from the same fountain going back 50, 70, 100 years ago, and the blacks had separate fountains, food, etc., etc. So that was a mode of discrimination. The Hindus have it even today, that in villages, there are separate wells for the Dalits, or the low caste, the untouchables, and there are wells for the upper caste. Food cannot be touched. It still continues, and it has been around for millennia. And to break that we humans are equal, that's why you sit on the floor, that you could have a Kennedy sitting on one side, and you could have someone like me sitting on the other side, a nobody, and we all eat from the same bowl. The food is prepared by everybody who's involved there. Anyone is welcome to volunteer, and then the food is prepared from the same bowl. Everyone is fed the same food. The food is typically vegetarian today, but we have no issue with meat as such per se, and I'll come to that in a second or when you ask me questions. So every time or any time there's a gathering of people where Sikhs get together for prayer, there's always food served at the end of the prayer service. So when you come to a Sikh gathering, you'll never go hungry, because when your tummy is full, you listen better. I'm just going to go one or two slides about the scripture itself. So the Sri Guru Granth Sahib, the word Guru I'd already mentioned. Granth literally means a voluminous book. So that's what the Guru Granth. So Guru Granth Sahib, the word Sahib I'd already explained to you, it's an honorific. So we have two concepts, spiritual as well as temporal. So the word Guru is, on the spiritual side, and Sahib is temporal on the temporal end. So the concept of the temporal world being ruled by a spiritual side is the key, which I, in part, I think Islam also has that. But for us, we have no clergy. And the idea is, in order to rule, in order to govern people anywhere, your faith, the goodness of your faith has to be the guide to run your political end or your temporal end, and not the other way around. Our scripture was written by the Sikh guru, the six Sikh gurus, while they were still alive in their own handwriting. We have the original scriptures handwritten. So this, if I'm not mistaken, please correct me if I'm wrong, is one of the few faiths where the original prophets' handwritten writings are part of the scripture, not after they passed away. So this is not history, but it's the revealed writings in their own hands. 15 Pagats, who are known as the spiritual leaders from other traditions. So this is one of the few scriptures which actually incorporates enlightened revelations from other religious leaders or other spiritual leaders, which were completely in consonance with the guru's own thought processes. And there were bards and other Sikhs in that order who also contributed to the Sikh scripture. The scripture is 1,429 pages long. It's a pretty lengthy scripture. The entire scripture can be sung from the first page to the last page. It's all poetry. It's all mystical poetry. That's how it is. And a few instruments like the rabab, the saranda, the sarangi, the jodi, these were invented by some of the gurus themselves. And just like you have in Western music, you have musical notes. Similarly, in the music from that part of the world, you have what are called rags, and there are different notes, and 31 different notes are used. And which can be, so the entire scripture, parts of it are sung, might sound slightly more sad, some are slightly happier, but there are no extremes, like something is very, to one extreme or the other extreme. They are basically to focus your mind, the singing, which I'm sure in the Jewish faith and the Christian faith, you're very familiar with hymn singing. That's exactly what goes on in the Sikh tradition, where the entire scripture, or parts of it, are sung every Sunday, Friday when we get together for an hour, hour and a half, and that's typically what happens. So the one part here which I wanted to point out is ekonkar. The very first word is actually 2 syllables. The first is actually a number. So if you look over there, you see right under the word content, I've got ik. Ik actually means the number 1, and onkar means the one, the only one. So our scripture starts with a number, not an alphabet, to explain, and the rest is all explanation about the one. Maybe this is a little too busy, but I just wanted to point out that, the Sikh scripture has no issue with science at all. It has a lot of our writings completely gel with the modern science. I don't know how much time I have. I'm just keeping track of the time, so please let me know. The central message, again, is one humanity, and we are all brothers and sisters of the same divine. The essence, again, at the very end, that God or the Creator is formless, and everything that happens revolves around her order, and that is known as hukam. So hukam is the order of what the Creator has created. I do want to point out the interfaith part of our religion. I've mentioned the page number and the verse. Don't say the Vedas or the books, and this is being alluded to. The Torah, the Bible, the Quran are false. False is the one who does not study them. So the point I'm making here is our scripture very clearly indicates, and it's written there, we are not Hindus, and we are not Muslims, and we are definitely not Hindus. So we are neither of those faiths, because a lot of writings you may read, whether it's the internet or books written by Western authors, there's a lot of erroneous information put in there that it's a hybrid, meaning our faith is a hybrid of Islam and Hinduism. Absolutely incorrect. Ours is a revealed faith. There are always commonalities with other religions because they also have great, wonderful things. So there are always differences, but there are also lots of commonalities, which then, you know, the older religions always are going to wonder, well, they must have copied from us. Not necessarily, because there are some things which are innate to good human beings, and they may be just common. So the other is Kabir. Kabir happened to be a Muslim weaver of his time, going back more than 5-6 centuries ago, and that's his quotation there. And but I want to point out at the very bottom, in the annals of religious history, it is probably a first that the propagation of the Sikh religion, where he gave Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib was the 9th Guru, and this was 1675 November, when the 9th Guru was actually the Kashmiri Brahmins came to him, the main leaders came to him and said that the Islamic king at that time, Aurangzeb, wanted to convert all the Hindus to Islam, apparently. So they came to him and kind of basically pleaded with him, saying, listen, can you help us? Because, you know, otherwise we're going to be all converted. So he says, you know, go back and tell him that, you know, I will do what it takes to help you. So he was arrested eventually, Guru Tegh Bahadur, and he was beheaded by the Mughal king. And he gave his life to save a people who he had absolutely no commonality ideologically based on religion. This is a first in the annals of religious history. So I just want to point that out. So part of what I was just talking earlier, sacrifice and martyrdom. When you hear the word martyrdom, a lot of people, you know, get up in arms and say, oh my God, these guys must be blowing themselves up. No, martyrdom in the Sikh religion is very different than any other martyrdom you've heard before or you've seen. Martyrdom in the Sikh religion is simply a person who's actually suffered and given his or her life so that other people can live and better their lives, but to stand up for the beliefs, what they believe. Now, all these pictures you see here, these are not photographs, these are obviously paintings, but these are part of history which are in several Sikh museums in Punjab and across the diaspora. And if you look at the one on the extreme right, this is the kind of wheel that the second last bullet point I have there, Pai Subaik Singh and Pai Shahbaz Singh, they were both father and son, and they were tortured and crushed on that wheel by the Mughal rulers on March 25th, 1745. The photograph in the middle, if you notice the man sitting down with blood on his shoulders, if you notice his scalp is in the other man's hand, and he was scalped alive. And this was done, excuse me. So that was Pai Taru Singh. Pai Taru Singh was scalped alive on July 16th, 1745. This is again, all this was done to convert the Sikh leaders and the disciples of the leaders of the prophets to convert to Islam. And they went through this. 3 of our gurus were killed by Mughal rulers. They were tortured, boiled, fried. I mean, very horrific deaths. And this is all history. This is not something which did not have, this has all happened in the last 3-4 centuries. So just want to point that out, that a lot of suffering has happened just to keep our identity, nothing else. This is not, they were not being tortured because they were spreading the word, etc. This is because they believed in equality and, you know, not evangelizing other people's faith on others. The Sikh genocide. So over 1 million Sikhs have been killed and murdered by the Indian regime. And this program started in 84, a little bit before 1984, and continued till 1998. This is the best kept secret by the Indian regime. And if you ask most non-Sikhs in America, you know, a lot of them will just, you know, shake their, oh, that's old news, etc., and just, you know, not even talk about it, because the Indian regime has done a fantastic job of hiding all this and shoving it under the rug. And we have a separate website which you can go and take a look at some of the information on thirdsikhgenocide.org. And so I won't spend too much time on this for the moment. We did come out with a plaque to commemorate and memorialize all those who died. And so this plaque is in 2-3 dozen gurdwaras. It's at some places of businesses. And we are trying to expand this so that we can memorialize, the hundreds of thousands of people who died, and no one seems to even know that that happened. So this is part of what the American Sikh Council is working on. So some fun facts after that little morose part of the presentation. So the first pilgrims I've already mentioned came in the 1890s, and I have not put a photograph here for lack of time, but we have found a photograph which is on our website as part of one of our brochures about Sikhs in World Wars, and of a Sikh soldier who fought in the US Civil War in 1862. And I'll be happy to share that photograph and brochure with all of you. So the Sikhs have been around here for over 150 years. There's just no official records, but we do have a photograph now. So the first Gurdwara, which is on the US Historical Register, was 1912 in Stockton, California. And I just visited the Gurdwara after a long time in February again, and to pay my respects there and take some photographs in February sometime before COVID started. The first Sikh soldier who fought from American soil is Corporal Bhagat Singh Thind, whose photograph you see on the top right with his rifle. And he was given an honorable discharge at the end of 1918 and went on to get a PhD from University of California, Berkeley in theology, and lived till the late 1950s, I believe. And the gentleman in the blue turban on the left, in the middle, is the inventor who works for Micron Electronics, and he's got over 1,350 patents. A real genius, and I haven't spoken to him yet, but we're trying to get him to come and speak at one of our events. And he's got 2 young boys. He's probably the same age as me, in his mid-50s. And then, of course, is the older gentleman who's 92 on the far right, on the far bottom right, whose name is Dr. Narinder Singh Kapani. And he sold his company probably about 35 years ago, I believe, to AT&T or Bell Labs. And he's the unsung hero, the man who actually worked on the fiber optic cable. And a lot of people don't know that. And the first Sikh congressman, unfortunately, he did not wear a turban. He cut his hair because of the intense discrimination when he came in the 1915, 1917 era. As a student, did his PhD in mathematics. And Dr. Dalip Singh Sandh, whose family still lives in Southern California, was a 3-time congressman and died in his 3rd term. So he was the first Sikh congressman in the US. So Sikhs in academia. The first wave came in 1907, second wave in 1913, and the third wave is 1917. And if you look on the top right-hand corner, on the absolute right side, you'll see this man with a very little a whiff of a beard and a black turban. That's my grandfather. So he went to Oregon State University, got his bachelor's, and then went on to Iowa State University, got his master's. So that's part of my family history. I think this is something a lot of you would smile, I hope. Sikhs in World War I and World War II. Over 500,000, somewhere between 500,000 to 700,000. We don't have exact numbers, but there were over 500,000 turban-wearing Sikh men. Not a single one was without his turban. 83,000 Sikh soldiers died in battle, and 109,000 wounded in battle. This is to fight with the Allies to save the Allies and the Western concept of liberty, freedom, and justice for all. That's what the Sikhs have done. And this is never mentioned in America at any of the veterans meetings, etc. So I'm trying to push on that. And anything, any of you folks listening in can help on that end would be very appreciated, because this story must be told, because this has never been told to folks. None of them observed their faith. All wore a gas mask. in World War I, World War II, never ever had an issue. Not a single one wore a helmet. In those days in World War I, at the end of the day, some would actually, when they removed their turban, when they got home or got to their tent, they'd be picking, bullets out of their turbans. There are lots of stories about that. So they've fought in every front, from Malaysia to Turkey, from Germany to France to Singapore. There are thousands of graves in France. And yet, here's the irony. There are villages spread across France with graves in Italy and many other countries. But today, since 2004, the turban is not allowed to be worn in any public forum. Kids who go to public schools in France can't wear their turbans. They're supposed to go bareheaded. That's the thanks Sikhs get for fighting and helping the French. So I'm going to show you this little video, which is very interesting. About Captain Simratpal Singh, a West Point grad, and he has just completed his MBA, and he's been appointed a lecturer or instructor at West Point. So he's already moved in, and he's teaching, I believe, business or economics there. And he's a career officer. His intent is to stay as long as he can and spend his life there. After all the other work that's gone in to help kids, my kids or kids who are at this, age where they want to go to West Point, but not shed their faith or leave their faith at the door. Finally, one young woman who's just graduated and two young men with their turbans and everything intact are in their third year at West Point for the first time. And I wanted my both boys to go there, and somehow that didn't happen, but maybe you'll find a way to get them in eventually. So on that point, I'm going to mention the Sikh American Scouts. I think one gentleman here has seen me and possibly my boys at the Boy Scouts Jamboree last time over, maybe in 2017. So those two guys there on that picture are both my sons. The older one, Karanveer, wrote a book in high school, and a very interesting book because of the turban and beard, kids from our faith get bullied 3 times the national average. And he took it upon himself at the age of 17 to write a comprehensive book and how to, learn different skills and to become confident with self-esteem, etc., and to withstand some, a little bit bullying, and because the time are going to go away. But so the book came out so well that the previous president sent him a letter of congratulations from the White House, and just made his day. So he's just finished his bachelor's on a combined MPA degrees. He's working on his MPA, his second year, and he's sitting for his LSAT, and he's hoping to get into the JAG Corps, and I'm praying that he does once he finishes his law school. The other kid, Shaviers, who's on the right, is at Rutgers, and he's a double major, major in bio and computer science, and he happens to be the youngest Eagle Scout in the nation with a Hornet A badge. Eagle at 12 and Hornet A badge at 14, and a real tough kid. So I'm hoping that they inspire more kids, and we are recruiting more kids across the nation to get into Scouts. So the American Sikh Council, I just want to touch a little bit on that because I'm on the council. So our main, the criteria and what we actually do is to weigh on issues of critical importance for the faith, just like any major faith, whether it's the National Council of Churches or the Catholic Council. Similarly, we are the main council in America, so we weigh on a lot of these issues which happen within the country and sometimes outside the country. But while we're doing all that, some of the ongoing initiatives to help our brethren and sisters in the country, one is bullying prevention. It's a very big deal among our children, especially the male children, because they stand out with their conspicuous turbans and uncut hair. So we're working on that. Sikh Scouting has been, again, a pet thing for me. So we are recruiting kids from across the nation to get into Scout. And we are not trying to form our own troops. We're actually trying to get the kids into any troop so that they become part of, a better America. And in the meantime, we have educated 175,000 just regular Scouts across the nation. And just like, I'm presenting to you. And we've educated 125,000 educators, social study teachers, history teachers, school psychologists, etc. and in the last 4 years. Sikh genocide, I just touched on that. It's finally now part of the Holocaust education and other resources in New Jersey. It took us 10 years just to do that. We've written and compiled and co-authored. I've co-authored a bunch of books, but the 12 books, one is now being used at Rutgers in the South Asian department. The other book on bullying is now used in about 37 school districts across the Eastern Seaboard. And some of the other initiatives we have done are right. You can just read them. So our resources are available. We got brochures, workbooks, books, a whole lot of stuff on our main website, American Sikh Council, and our other websites, part of the council, are Third Sikh Genocide, and then Bullying Sikh American Children. And some of the material is also on our main website, but also on the Garden State Scouting website for scouting. And the same information is also on PSA's website, which I forgot to add here. So with that, I hope I'm holding my time. And I want to thank everyone for their patience. If I made any errors, said anything out of the ordinary, please forgive me. One sometimes tends to make some mistakes. So thank you.
Thanks, Kavneet. If anybody has any questions or comments, please feel free, raise your blue hand, and we'll get you recognized. I guess, Bill, want to unmute yourself? First question.
You unmute. There you go. Can you hear me now?
We got you.
Yeah. Okay. Very impressive presentation. Thank you very much. I only know one Sikh, and he's a very distinctive person, as are you, in that this moral code and the strength of your behavior with the beliefs that you have, it's very impressive. And this guy, he's very successful in business. He's courageous. It's a wonderful organization. So I commend you for that. My question is this: your scripture? Do you consider that a closed scripture? Or let's say one of your sons sees the light and becomes a guru, and does he? What's the philosophy in the Sikhs?
Okay, now excellent question. You ask the question is very large, so I'll try to So you're trying to cover a lot. So the scripture itself, for us, is a divine revelation through the gurus. And none of the gurus ever said, I'm either the son of God or the nephew of God or I'm special. They just said, we are simply servants with a message. And for us, the 10 gurus, there was a unending, unbroken line of 10 gurus, and not all were related to each other, but the divine light, we believe, was the same in all 10 of them. The scripture itself is all about, the crux of the scripture is all about love, how to be better to others, how to help humanity, and how to stand up for oppression at any given time. So it is it's not simply, just love thy neighbor and just sit by and do nothing. Love thy neighbor, love everybody, respect everybody. But if someone's being beaten up, you better stand up for them. And if you've tried all other things and nothing works in the end, after all means are done, then you have the authority to pick up arms and fight for your protection and to protect anyone who's meek and weak. Your question was, what if my son finds the light and becomes a guru? No, he can't. If he finds he becomes a good human being, he becomes a great human being, but he cannot become a guru. The line of gurus is ended, so the final guru for us is the scripture. No idols, no other gurus. That is it. And if a person becomes really great, great, because the whole crux of every Sikh like me is to become, get the light and become enlightened, so that you minimize your ego to the nth degree, which is the hardest thing to do.
So
I hope that's answered because I don't have much time. So,
this is Mitch Erickson. I thank you.
Mitch.
Yeah, could we, are you waiting to be called upon?
I guess I am now. You go ahead. I'm sorry. I don't have a hand. I was going to talk about exactly what they were talking about, but go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Kavneet, for a brilliant presentation. But it raises a question that's a follow-up to Bill's question. Are Sikhs really an ethnic group, a religion, or some mixture of the two? And I'm asking that because, you know, I'm Jewish, and so I'm part of an ethnic group, part of a religious heritage, and maybe something else. Jews normally think that being Jewish passes through the mother.
Okay.
So I wonder if you'd just make a comparison. How does it work for Sikhs?
An excellent question. So partly yes, partly no, and I'll come to both of them. So in part, for example, you're talking about the Jewish faith. So the Jewish faith, you know, I understand, you know, today, you know, I'm not going back in time, but today, the bulk of the Jewish faith are mostly Europeans, and there's also a group which is more an ethnic group in there, but you still have other Jewish folks who are black and brown and Asian in there in small numbers. Very similarly, the Sikhs who happen to be from the northwest part of modern India, Pakistan, for a lack of a better word, South Asia, and it's been a melting pot. So there have been diverse ethnicities or diverse groups of people, hordes which came from Mongolia, from Iran, from as far as Turkey. So there's been a lot of mixing going on there. And so there's, you know, even I can claim, oh, I'm a certain ethnic group, but no, we're all mixed up. But the bulk of them today in America, if you see, or North America, we may look similar with brown skin, but features being more Caucasian. That's the bulk of them. But there are also a minority who have adopted the faith. It could be someone from the Jewish faith, or from the Christian faith, who happen to be of European descent. Some are African descent. There are others. There are a few Chinese and Asian, you know, from Thailand. I've seen people from even South America. So yes, most Sikhs consider themselves as one ethnic bloc, but they really are not, because they speak one common language. That particular larger ethnic bloc is Punjabi, because Punjab has been over there for 1,000 years. And over time, some people from Punjab, you know, became Buddhists, some followed Islam, some remained, you know, became Hindus, and some became Sikhs. But there's a large part which actually have one common language. That's one part. The other part of the question was, does the Sikh faith go through the mother or the dad? Not through the mother. And to be a Sikh is by choice. Yes, I happen to be a Sikh by birth, but by choice, I remained a Sikh consciously in this form. And now if I had cut my hair and, you know, shaven off, you wouldn't even give me a second look. And there are lots of them in America and North America and Europe who have done away because of the intense discrimination they could go through at jobs and schools, etc. That's the primary reason, not because they want to do it with identity. And so the faith does not travel genetically or through the mother or the dad. It's by choice, but the bulk of the population has just accepted the fact, okay, I'm born into this faith, therefore I'm a Sikh. But there's no tradition that it goes through the faith travels to the mother or the dad. That does not exist. I hope I've answered your question to some extent.
Yes.
Okay.
Nolan, Ash, you're next.
Yeah, two quick questions. One, what caused the Indian genocide to end in 1998, which evidently it did? And number two, I did a Wikipedia last night and I sent it out to everybody about the Sikhs, and it's a little perhaps a stereotype, I don't know. But in World War I, Sikhs were 2% of the population of India, but 20% of the soldiers who fought in World War I. Was that patriotism, or were they forced to join the military? I don't know.
That is partly the elephant in the room. The Sikhs are still 2% or less, in fact, of the Indian population today, and unfortunately, and that the reason is we don't evangelize, we don't proselytize, and otherwise, you know, there could be millions of Sikhs. Now that could be our fault, but that's what it is, just like the Jewish faith. The other part is part of our faith, which I've explained to you. Yes. It emanates not because I'm a great warrior, because I've got 22-inch arms or any such thing. Our faith teaches us to stand up for others. So everything emanates from our scripture and our traditions, that you stand up for the right side and the right cause. So that was partly the reason why so many Sikhs happen to be fighting with the Allies and not some other people who could be Hindu, Muslim, whatever. Yes, there were Hindus and Muslims also who were there, but if there were 98% of them, their numbers should have been in proportion, but they weren't, because it's not part of their faith tradition to stand up and fight for others' rights. So it's a very wholesome part of our faith, which is the reason why the Sikhs joined the fight. And the other part, of course, maybe in part, which I'm just talking in jest, maybe they love fighting. No, I'm just kidding. But yes, they got paid like any other soldier. Even the Allies, when they were fighting, it's not like they were fighting for free. They still got paid a salary. So if someone wants to call all the Sikh soldiers, oh, they were just, mercenaries, well, then everybody was a mercenary in that context. So the Sikhs, even today, are sometimes used as cannon fodder by the Indian regime. On one hand, they're trying to dilute our faith in every which way, and when the time comes, they pump you up and say, oh, you're a great guy, you're a great fighter, and go fight on the border and die, and they give you a medal when you're dead. What good is that? So what's happening is the Indian regime has co-opted the Buddhists, the Jains, and the Sikhs legally in their system under the Constitution, where it says these three religions are under the purview of Hinduism. Imagine if America was ruled by Muslims, just an example, please forgive me, and the law said that all Christians, Jews, and Sikhs come under Islam. How would you like that? That's exactly what the Sikhs are stuck in, the jaws of this bear claw, or jaws of the tiger, whatever you want to call it. And they are so small in numbers that they're fighting the system, and they are not able to, do what they and get their rights. That's one of the reasons why there is such a hoo-ha, and also water, electricity, power, agricultural rights. Basically the entire economy is in disarray because the central government controls their lives. It's a farming community. Most Sikhs are farmers. The water, power, the prices on the wheat, etc., is all controlled by the central government. So they have been made into basically paupers over the last 3-4 decades. That is one of the reasons why there was such a hue and cry, and to put down that cry of civil rights. That is the reason it's like putting down a rebellion against civil rights and so forth, for civil rights. And that's one of the reasons they killed so many Sikhs, to snuff the voices of liberty permanently. That's why it stopped, but it's still there.
That's what happened in 1998. I was curious as to what stopped the genocide in 1998.
They killed 1 million people. So when you kill 1 million people, you put the fear of God in all the people. If every family has lost one young man or 2 young men in their family, they're finally going to keep their mouth shut and say, you know what, we'll live with it. Okay. It's just like what happened with the Jews, what the Nazis did. That's the exact same thing the Hindus in India are doing to the Sikhs. No difference, because the upper caste, the 15% upper caste are controlling 85% of the lower caste, which includes the Sikhs, the Jains, the Buddhists, and the Muslims. It's not a democratic country. It's something very different. The word secular, what we in America think secular, is not the same definition what is used in India. I wouldn't want to elaborate and take your time, but we can talk about it later.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mitch, you're next. Mitch?
Oh, I'm sorry. I just want to follow up on what Bill asked about the Granath, and I looked it up on Amazon. Turns out you can get the audiobook for free, or you can get the paperback book for $21 in English. So the first line is one universal creator God, period. The name is truth, period. Creating being personified, period. No fear, no hatred. That's the first couple of lines of it. So if you want to read it, you can get it in English. And I'm sure that there's, different translations, but that's what I found on Amazon, just to follow up on what you asked, Bill.
Okay, thanks.
Ralph Siegel, you're next with a question.
Can you hear me?
We got you.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there female Sikhs? I didn't see any. How are they identified? And are Sikhs supposed to marry Sikhs?
We actually lost our speaker. Okay, are we trying to get Kavneet back online?
I can't imagine he just wandered off. It's some glitch.
Yeah, he is not in the meeting anymore.
We'll follow up with him afterwards and thank him privately. Good talk.
Okay. All right, why don't we take a 5-minute break and come on back for the TUG meeting afterwards.
Thank you, Joel. Thanks, everybody.